Hello and welcome to PMI's Uncommon Sense podcast, tools to improve your work forever. I'm Susanna Clark, Managing Partner with PMI, the performance improvement consulting and training firm. Our Uncommon Sense podcast is a 15-minute conversation with our expert consultants. They talk a lot of common sense, although much of it is not common practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. We want you to be inspired to improve your business through learning more about the tools which can help you succeed and grow. Today, I'm joined in Uncommon Sense by Sean Buckland.
Hi, Suze.
So Sean and I recently have been talking a lot about how we can integrate Agile software development into our Lean Six Sigma improvement process. And Sean's joined me today to talk specifically about a project that he was involved with that had that need.
Okay. Yes, thanks very much, Suze. I find this a particularly useful case study because it's got a number of points that I have used over and over again since then. So although it's a few years old now, this particular case study, it's one that's been highly influential in my methods since. But before I go into the detail of it, let me just provide a little bit of context. Number one is in more and more of our Lean Six Sigma work now, we do not have the luxury of saying, let's leave the technology alone. Let's just improve the process. Let's remove the waste. It's great still to say we should not automate the waste. That is still as true now as it's always been. But very often the systems we're working with now, the processes we're working with now are already in the software. They're already digitized in some way. So it's incredibly difficult now to come across certainly some of the bigger projects without it requiring some form of software development at some point of the solution design. Obviously, if it doesn't require it, don't automate the waste. But if it does require it, that's where the linkage with Agile can be very, very powerful. Because if we think about the improvement cycle, first of all, by the time we've got to the point of an identified set of root causes, we still do not know what the solution is going to be. Traditionally, especially in the area of waterfall, software development required us to have a set of user requirements properly documented, properly set out, but we still are not in a position to do that. But ironically, by the time we are in a position to do that, we need to have the software working in the live environment to demonstrate that it's an improvement. So what I'm talking about here is the power of integrating Agile specifically into the test and study phase of the improvement cycle. And when would we use it? As I've already mentioned, when we must in some way change the software that we're using. When I'm doing this, all of the standard lean principles would still apply. So I would still be seeking to eliminate as much waste as possible. Therefore, what I would be looking to do is use Agile as the method to work collaboratively with the end users to design the new interfaces that the process operators need to be able to run their processes in a better way. It's not about saying this is what the developer wants. It's not about saying this is the code we always use, therefore we must keep using it. It still is first and foremost about if I'm the process operator, whether I'm somebody filling in a form on a contact center screen, or whether I'm a machine operator trying to code the machine, wherever it is that I'm interacting with the software, it's that point of the interface that I'm talking about. How do we make sure the developers design exactly what is needed by the end user? And that's why I'd like to introduce this case study, because everything depended on us being able to solve this problem. So I'm not going to obviously provide any commercially confidential information or spill any beans here, but it was a very, very interesting project. And I'm going to start by saying the entire project was put on hold for 3 months while we even just argued with the internal developer team about whether they should adopt the Agile approach or not. Because at this point in time, the developer team was still fully wedded to the waterfall method, and the pushback was constantly, you send us your user requirements, we'll prioritize them, then we'll let you know what we're doing to do when we're going to do it. And the answer was no. You will send developers to this improvement team who will work with us on a daily, weekly basis to design the software that we need to run this process. And that argument took 3 months and some very heavy duty boots to be finalized. Nowadays, things have moved on an awful lot. The majority of dev teams are now DevOps teams, and it's built much, much more into the infrastructure. But the caveat I've got here is how much have we rebranded to DevOps, for example, versus how much have we adopted collaborative working. And that is an important distinction. So the first thing to be checking is, does the developer team truly understand collaborative agile working, or is it still throw stuff over the wall and we'll throw it back? Number one, everything else from here on in will assume we have fixed the problem of collaborative working first. That will save the case study to the positive bits rather than the very painful 3 months we lost. Right. Now then, here's the scenario we had. We had a situation where there was an incredibly complex operation to run. It was in a logistics environment, so lots of bits and pieces going left, right, and center all over the time, in real time, most days of the week. It didn't operate Sundays, but it was 6 days a week, 24 hours a day, and over 3 shifts. And the process controllers had to try and help them manage this. Each one of them had 4 large screens, each filled with 2 windows of different databases, and a radio with multiple channels so they could radio out to people on the ground. And the main issue was, for the customer, day after day after day, we were failing to deliver 100% on time. And that was commercially crippling the business. In order to fix this, we need to, amongst many other root causes we had to deal with, one of the core root causes of failure to do the work on time, day in, day out, was the process controllers had such a complex task to do, there was no way of them determining what was actually the top priority. It was actually down to the individual just to try and make sense of all these screens. And our view was the process could be much simpler, and we could just work on a single prioritized list of work to be done, and it should be done in that order. But attached to that was the requirement for the process controllers to be able to see that queue of work and see the status of that queue of work. Something they'd never previously been able to do. And what we needed to do, once we finally had a developer on the project team and we trained them up and helped them understand the problem we're trying to solve, we were saying, look, we haven't got the time, we haven't got the money, we're not even suggesting we should change the core databases. That was entirely out of scope. But what was in scope was using a low-code, no-code type solution to develop a new visual management interface so that each process controller, regardless of whether they were first minute on the shift or exhausted after 8 hours of work, they could still easily make the same decision every time, regardless of which process controller or which shift they were working on. And this is what we needed to do, because then we knew the work would get done in the order it needed to be done. We therefore needed to do some number of things. We needed to develop a code that would effectively create an algorithm to select the right priorities and test that. We needed to design a visual screen that worked for the process controllers and they could easily see and read and always make the same decision. We needed to see the status of the work. Was it on time? Was it a bit late? Was it finished? If there was a specific set of characteristics for the work that needed extra treatment. Each one of these became a user story. As a process controller, I need to know which piece of work I should release to do next. As a process controller, I need to know what stage of the process the released pieces of works are in. As a process controller, I need to be able to see if a piece of work is late for moving to the next stage. So you can imagine we did a lot of maths and a lot of statistics behind the scene in order to program these algorithms in. But the crucial thing was this: the Agile methodology became central to our way of working. We had the developers embedded into our improvement team. The developer was sitting side by side with the process controllers and with the analysts, the business analysts who were doing all the statistics in order to be able to feed the algorithms. And we would design first, what's the layout on a piece of paper? We'd draw it together. We would then mock it up into PowerPoint. We would then, using the low-code, no-code, say, what can we easily scrape straight through without having to make any changes in behind the scenes to how the database is working, and so on. And then one user story at a time, we made this screen more and more functional. After a period of about 1 month, we felt safe, and it wasn't 1 month full time, the project team was meeting 2 days a week. So after a period of about 8-9 days, so really not very long at all when you think about it, we were able to then say to the project team members who were process controllers, we would like you to start operating this in your live environment to see whether or not it's working, and make notes. And when we come back together again next week, we will then improve and improve and improve. And because that was happening is they were still having to run their process the normal way, because that was all that was actually live. But we had this dummy version of their control system that they would run same time. And after a period of about another month, we found for all 3 shifts, they were doing their work first on the new screen and then having to go and implement it the hard way on the old screen. And because they were then hitting more and more real life problems, we were able to find the way in the project team meetings to find ways of solving those all within the one screen, just using visual management principles. And all the time updating our algorithms and the decision making behind the scenes to make it more and more valid as we got more and more data to test it. Until eventually we said, that is now working. And then could become the challenge of building so that when I worked in the main screen, the new screen, it actually then fed back the other way and did all of the hard work in the multiple screens that they used to have. So after a period of about 3 months, we were able to start testing the new process in the new live environment. And about 6 months in, we'd resolved all of the niggles, and the process controllers could run the entire operation just from one screen, one half screen, and the radios were pretty much silent, which is how they were fixing the problem in the past. Give up on the computers, just phone somebody. Yeah. So I tell this story because it's in my mind, it's a really good example of without the developers on the team working in an agile way, we would never have been able to improve the process in the way it needed to be improved, because we would have just said the root causes are in the software and we need a new ERP system. We didn't need a new ERP system. We needed a new way of the ERP system talking to the process and back again. Without the developer, we wouldn't have known what was possible. And without the process controllers, we wouldn't have known what was needed. And without them in the same place at the same time, we'd never have come up with creative solutions that worked in the same way anyway. And so in a very short period of time, we were able to transform the entire operation for next to no money.
Yes, because and all of those parts are the key, aren't they? Because so often people assume that the budget's required to get that sort of shift change in operation is going to be quite prohibitive.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting, and having experienced being on the other side of that and experienced the scenarios where you send things off to IT and pretty much hope that things will be actioned within a timescale. and the frustration of not being able to get them to come and work collaboratively. And that's no blaming on IT. It's just the way the system's organised.
Yeah.
I can absolutely see what a shift change that would be.
Yeah, and I'm with you entirely, Susan. I think you raise, I think, possibly a very powerful concluding comment, and that is, unless we've got that true collaborative spirit working side by side to test and study theories, plan, do, study, act in a safe way, then we're sub-optimizing the value of both the operational team and the development team, whilst taking longer and longer to find solutions.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for your time today, Sean.
No problem.
Thank you so much for joining us. You can find more episodes of our Uncommon Sense Tools to Improve Your Work Forever in our Knowledge Hub on our website, or, of course, your favourite podcast platform. And do subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode, where you'll find links to more content on this topic, which includes webinar recordings, toolbox guides, blogs, and infographics, and our training page. You can always drop us a line on team@pmi.co.uk and arrange a time to have a call to talk about how these tools can help you in your organisation. We'd really love to hear from you.